Yes, I believe it was the Glock that was located in the vehicle.
Now, during the questioning of Ms. Limon, there was also a reference to the fact that she had told people about the affair with Jonathan. Is that right? Do you remember that?
That is what Detective Brewer had said at the time.
Were you aware of anyone that Ms. Limon had told about her affair with Jonathan Hearn?
I wasn't aware that she had told anybody about the affair. As far as her, I knew that Rob was aware of the affair at some point in time.
So it wasn't Sabrina who had mentioned anything about it, it was only Rob Limon, right? That you're aware of?
That what I was aware of, yes.
During the course of the interrogation by Detective Brewer, he also was telling Sabrina that she knew that Jonathan had killed her husband. Did he not?
I believe he did say that, yes.
In fact, he said it multiple times. Is that right?
That is correct.
And she always denied that she knew that it was Jonathan, right?
Yes, sir, she did.
Now, when he was showing her pictures of the motorcycle, he said the pictures were taken about 300 feet from where Robert was killed. Is that right?
I don't remember the exact verbiage he used at that point in time.
Directing your attention to page 18, lines 9 through 11 of the second portion of that interview from the 18th.
Yes, he stated it was about 300 feet from where her husband was killed.
Now, the photo that he was showing her was the one from the surveillance camera capture at Patco. Is that right?
I believe that's correct, yes, sir.
Okay. And that's not 300 feet from where her husband was killed, right?
Not exactly 300 feet.
In fact, it's closer to about a half mile away.
Maybe at least a quarter of a mile.
Now, Detective Brewer also said that they'd shown that photograph to a number of people, and all of them identified it as being Jonathan. Is that right?
Yes, sir, he did say that.
That wasn't true either, right?
As far as them directly identifying Jonathan, we did show the photo to some of the people who had met Jonathan before, and they said it looked like him as far as the stature. But they weren't positive if it was him or not.
So, again, that was a fabrication by Detective Brewer to try to get Ms. Limon to
To get her to be truthful, sir.
Well, you're assuming she wasn't being truthful, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But at that time, you don't know whether or not she wasn't being truthful, right?
I had learned through the investigation of some stuff and that she could have been truthful about, and she decided to continue to lie to me. At that point in time, I felt she was not being truthful with that interview.
She told you about the affair, which was the thing that she'd hidden from you initially. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And she didn't tell you about her and Rob's lifestyle. Would that be accurate? Even though you suspected it.
She did not.
She didn't tell you about Jonathan, and that he may own a motorcycle. Is that right?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Sure. She didn't tell you when you told her you were looking for somebody named John who knew Rob and rode a motorcycle. She didn't tell you that, yes, I know somebody by that name who rides a motorcycle. Is that right?
She gave me a few other names of John that possibly owned motorcycles.
And she gave you as good a description of them as she could, and none of those descriptions match the suspect that you had seen on the motorcycle, either at the Patco video or at the Pilot gas station, right?
Objection, speculation.
Well, you looked at the Pilot video, right?
Yes, I did.
By the time you told her about this John and the motorcycle, right?
Correct.
And the descriptions that she gave you of the persons that she knew of as having the name John, that knew Rob, and rode a motorcycle or owned a motorcycle, didn't match the description or the body type of the person in either the Patco video or the Pilot Station video, right?
I'm a little confused about the question, sir.
Sure. In the description she gave you of, was the first John she mentioned John Justice as being the John that knew Rob that owned a motorcycle?
That was one of them she mentioned, yes.
Okay. And she said, when she told you that, she said that she knew John Justice owned dirt bikes, right?
Correct.
Okay. When she talked about John Simeon, she described him, right?
Yes.
And she said he was approximately 50-some years old and a certain height, and that he was a heavier set, right?
Correct.
And that she knew, he knew Rob, right?
Correct.
And that he may own a motorcycle, right?
That's correct.
But the description she gave and the age didn't match what you observed in the video, right?
That's correct.
Okay. But when you spoke to her and on the 18th, she told you, she apologized for not telling you about Jonathan Hearn, right?
Yes, she did.
She apologized to you for not telling you about the affair, right?
She did.
And she apologized to you for not telling you the truth about her and Rob's lifestyle, right?
Yes.
Because she said to you that she didn't believe that this had anything to do with their personal life, right?
That's what she said, yes, sir.
And throughout the interview, both the one in Boron that we listened to earlier and this 4 hours and 40 minutes that you conducted the interview of Sabrina, she never wavered once with regards to whether or not she knew Jonathan Hearn had killed her husband, right?
Objection, speculation also calls for a conclusion.
Speculation what?
And calls for a conclusion. You can rephrase it.
Sure. Did Sabrina ever say during the course of that interrogation that she knew that Jonathan Hearn had killed her husband, Robert?
Not at that interview, no. She didn't directly say that.
And it was Detective Brewer who said you knew, right? You knew he did it, right?
He did say that, yes.
And he went after her rather aggressively during the course of his interrogation. Would you not agree?
More aggressively than I did. Not as aggressive as I've seen from some interviews.
Okay. Sort of the good cop, bad cop routine that we've seen sometimes, or people try to portray.
That's
A little bit.
That's really not what we were trying to portray, but he did go after her a little more aggressively, yes.
And she still maintains she did not know that Jonathan Hearn had killed her husband, right?
That's correct, sir.
And she said that he never told her that he killed her husband, right?
That's correct.
And at the end of the interview, I don't know if it's Detective Brewer or Trevino, basically says that you haven't told me anything in 4 hours at all, right?
Yeah, I don't recall if it was Detective Brewer or Trevino. Something of that sort was said, yes.
Okay. During the break in the interview, when she was taken out of the room, there were videotaping going on. How long was she out of that room before she was brought back?
I don't recall the exact time, how long it was. I'd be guessing if I gave you a number.
There's no time stamp as to when an interview begins or ends, as far as the actual time?
There should be a timestamp on the video itself when it was initiated, but I don't know how long she was removed from that interview room into the soft room.
Okay. And when she was put into what you call the soft room, she was put in there by herself, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Was she handcuffed?
No, sir.
Was the room, lights turned off inside the room so it was pitch black?
No, sir.
And when you gave her, you talked about at the end of the first interview how you were hungry, starving, and she had to be too. Did you give her M&Ms to eat?
I believe I gave her something. I don't recall exactly what it was. Maybe a candy bar or something like that, and some water.
And that was after almost 3 hours of the interrogation time, is that right?
It was somewhere around 3 hours, maybe.
And that was after she'd been arrested in Hellendale at her children's school and then transported to Boron. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Where she was interviewed for about an hour by Detective Trevino in Rutledge.
I don't recall how long their interview went.
And then it's about an hour and a half to 2 hour drive from Boron to Bakersfield, right?
Roughly, yes.
And then she was first taken down to the central receiving facility right here, right? Next to this building, right?
Yeah, just in the basement here.
Yeah. And then transported out to Norris Road for you to interview, is that right?
That's correct.
Now, during the course of the interrogation, you talked about the fact that Sabrina never went to Tehachapi the night of the murder, is that right?
That is correct, sir.
You talked about how no matter what you would have gone to the scene, no matter what the police said, right?
If my spouse was murdered, I would have gone to the scene regardless of what was said, yes.
Okay. But, again, you're not a woman who's just lost her husband with 2 small children, right?
That's correct. I'm not a female with 2 small children.
And would you agree that, you know, you've been a police officer for a number of years, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you would agree that you're a little bit more, how would I put it, used to these types of scenes and dealing with this type of incident than, say, a woman who's had no experience in that area. Would you not agree?
I've seen a few, yes, sir.
Okay. And you don't know what she was actually told by the railroad personnel who came out to tell her that something had happened to Rob, right?
At that point in time, I didn't know what she was told by the railroad company, no.
Do you know if she was even told that Robert was dead?
At that point in time, I don't recall.
And you don't know what they told her, whether or not she should even go out there, or if she was even in an emotional state to go out there. You don't know that, right?
I don't know what her state of mind was, and don't know what she was told. I wasn't there.
I don't have any further questions at this time, Your Honor. Thank you very much, Detective Meyer.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith?
Detective Meyer, you were asked questions about ruses that you used with Ms. Limon. I wanted to ask you about one specifically, one that you brought up about a struggle possibly occurring at the shop. Where did you get that? I guess you labeled it as a ruse. Where did you get that information from?
The information from the scene, whenever I initially took the walkthrough, I noticed that the refrigerator door was open. There was water bottles and I believe Gatorade bottles strewn about the building itself, glass on the ground. So it appeared at that point in time that there was a struggle inside the shop, or right there by where Robert's located at.
Okay. So you took a logical inference from the evidence as you saw it at the scene.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What about blood on the clothing? Where did you get that from?
The blood on the clothing was a ruse. However, typically when there's some sort of struggle over, if it was even over a firearm or whatever the struggle was over, and if there was a shooting and there was close proximity, there possibly would be blood splatter onto the clothing of the subject or suspect.
Okay. So again, it's a logical inference that you took from the evidence as you saw it in an ongoing investigation.
Yes, sir.
You made some phone calls to Ms. Limon during your investigation, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you call the number 760-241-8060?
I did, sir.
What phone or whose phone is that?
That was Sabrina's home telephone number.
Did you also make calls to a 760-475-7844?
Yes, sir.
Whose phone is that?
That was Sabrina's personal cellular telephone.
Yesterday also moved into evidence was a cell records for 760-475-7845. Whose phone is that?
That was the personal cell phone for Robert Limon.
There's some other records previously moved in, a 760-987-3569. Whose phone is that?
That was the cell phone for Sabrina, which we call the burner phone.
That's all I have at this point, Your Honor.
Jerry, based on those questions, anything further?
Just some follow-up.
Sure.
To double check, the last number you were asked, cell phone, or phone number you were asked about, that was the 3569 number, is that right?
The 998 number?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, 3569. Is that Sabrina's?
No. It was
Burner
the
phone?
998-7958, I believe, which was the burner phone.
Okay. So when you just testified that was Sabrina's phone, that was not Sabrina's phone, is that right?
The 7958 number was the phone that was considered her burner phone.
Okay. Okay. That's what I want to be clear on. Now, you talked about, based on what you observed at the scene, there was a Gatorade bottle and a water bottle on the floor at the scene, is that right?
There was refreshment bottles on the ground, yes.
Okay. And you also mentioned there was broken glass on the floor of the shop, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that was from the overhead light, right?
Correct.
The fluorescent bulb up above that had been broken?
That's what it appeared, yes, sir.
Okay. They weren't struggling up there, right?
I wouldn't imagine it was pretty tall.
Because it's about 15 to 18 feet in the air, right?
Somewhere around there, yes, sir.
So when you say there was evidence of a struggle, there really wasn't evidence of any type of struggle that you observed, other than there were a couple of bottles on the floor and there was a overhead light that had been broken. Is that right?
That and the refrigerator door was open.
Okay. Which could mean Robert had just gotten things out of the fridge, and that's when the attacker showed up and shot him, right?
Correct.
Okay. Which wouldn't be signs of a struggle, right?
Depends on how you look at it, I guess.
Okay. Now, with regards to, I asked you earlier, and you talked about the scene and the broken light, the glass. The only location that you observed a bullet strike in that building, there was no evidence of any type of ricochet off of a wall behind Robert, or any other ricochet that put the bullet up in the glass. Is that right?
When we looked at the scene, the only really what I would call a bullet strike or a ricochet was in the light fixture itself. We did check the wall behind him immediately where the sink was at for the kitchenette, and then also the wall on the would be the east wall of the shop. Also checked that because we did see a couple little tears in the insulation. So we checked those too, got a ladder, checked those, and didn't find any signs of a bullet strike there, just in the light fixture.
And that's the part where there was no photographs actually taken up close of that light. Is that correct?
There was, I believe there was a photograph taken of the light. I don't know how up close the photo was.
Now, as the lead detective on this case, you're familiar with and have reviewed the autopsy report. Is that right?
I actually scanned the report, never read it in detail, but I did have a copy of the report and looked at it, yes.
7 of the Dr. Whitmore's autopsy report. Direct your attention to the first paragraph with regards to gunshot wound number 1.
Okay.
Now, based upon the testimony you heard from Dr. Whitmore and his report, it indicated that the entrance to, on that first, what he called gunshot number 1, which entered the chin, that is, the entrance wound is 8 1/4 inches below the top of the head. Is that right?
Correct.
And it indicated that the exit wound from the back of the neck was 10 inches from the top of the head. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And that would indicate a downward angle, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's the gunshot that purportedly broke a light bulb in the ceiling. Is that right?
That is correct.
Defense Exhibit U, marked next in order.
If I may approach you.
You was in uniform.
Detective Meyer, I'm going to show you a portion of Defense Exhibit U. Do you recognize those records?
Yes.
Are those records for Jonathan Hearn's phone?
Yes.
Is that as a result of records that you had obtained from the phone company, or were those records that were as a result of what's known as a cell write download?
I don't know exactly how where these records came from, but they do appear to be from a download. The cell phone records typically from the phone company look a little bit different, but
In other words, usually what you get is kind of an Excel spreadsheet with call detail records, I believe they're called. Is that right?
from the phone company, yes.
Yeah. But those appear to be records for Jonathan Hearn, is that right?
Yes.
computer, are those the same records that what I just showed you, you identified as being from Jonathan Hearn? If you can see them.
Yeah, it's hard to see, but
If you'd like to come get closer, make sure, I
Sure.
want to make sure we're accurate.
yes,
Okay. So those would be some of Jonathan Hearn's cell phone records, is that right?
yes,
And it appears from this particular document at page 6 of 7, is that right?
yes.
Okay, thank you. This time I'd ask to move defense exhibit U into evidence room.
You just,
None, Your Honor.
if you admit it.
Thank you. Now, you talked about evidence of struggle, you talked about blood spatter. Generally, blood spatter is as a result of a gunshot or some type of object striking the human body, and then the blood coming out of it as a result of the impact. Would that be accurate?
That'd be accurate, yes.
Okay. And if somebody's up close when they are firing a weapon, then the spatter sometimes goes on to the person who fired the shot.
Yes, it could.
Okay. And oftentimes it's projected actually past the person sometimes who fired the shot. Would that be accurate?
I think it just depends on the scenario, sir.
Depends on every scenario, right? Every case is different.
That's correct.
Okay. And oftentimes you get more blood spatter from the exit wound than you will from the entrance, right? Generally speaking.
It just depends on the scenario, sir.
In this case, was there any evidence of any footprints or any evidence of a struggle as a result of your examination of the scene and the blood spatter?
I don't recall seeing any disturbance in the blood that was on the ground.
Was there any type of footprints or any type of evidence on around Rob Limon's body with regards to evidence of a struggle?
I don't recall seeing any footprints directly near the body.
Was there any indication of any type of defensive wounds by Rob Limon that you observed when you examined the body at the scene?
No, there wasn't. I didn't get real close to the body or examine the body directly, so I did not. I would not know that.
Certainly those would have been indications such as abrasions on the knuckles or injuries to the hands. Those are indications of potential defensive wounds. Is that right?
Potentially, yes.
And you don't recall seeing any of that?
Nothing at the scene. I didn't, like I said, I didn't inspect the body at the scene. Some of that stuff may have been documented if there were any defensive wounds in the autopsy later.
And Dr. Whitmore never testified as to any evidence of any real defensive wounds, right?
I don't recall that in his testimony.
I have no further questions at this time. Thank you, Detective Meyer.
Smith?
Detective Meyer, it looks like I got two phone numbers backwards. Let's start with 760-998-7958. Whose phone is that?
That would be the burner phone.
That was seized from whom?
Sabrina Limon.
Now for 760-987-3569, what you just testified to in Defense Exhibit U, I believe. Whose phone did that belong to?
Jonathan Hearn.
Jonathan. Okay. Nothing further, Your Honor.